Well, thanks, Denise. So I'm Cameron Woodable, one of the directors of Cape Island Construction. And I don't remember the exact history, but I think Tracy approached us to get on board to assist with the build. You know, we've done a couple of similar things. And just a bit of history about Cape Island. We've been around about 20 years, based in the Southern Cape, got branches in the Western Cape. We do some pretty big steel structures with Jan, some motor dealerships, etc., etc. So I think that sort of swung it our way, that we'd worked with steel, and Tracy, we've worked with her before successfully, so she was happy to engage us, and we had a bit of steel knowledge, and obviously there was the other components, all off shutter, concrete, exposed brickwork. We'd done that successfully before, so I think that's why we were requested to get on board.
Great. Tracy, you want to tell us a little bit about your role in the project?
Yeah, I was approached by the client because the restaurant that was there was burnt down in the fires in 2 years ago. Is that right, Cameron? When were those fires?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And the site was quite severely damaged by the fires. So we were very restricted with what we could put up there. But he obviously wanted to put up a restaurant that was sufficient for the needs that they had before, plus additional for conferencing and things. So, and then he wanted it up as quickly as possible. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to go the steel route. As Cameron says, we also used materials that we didn't need to plaster or paint, just to also reduce the speed and the time it took to build the structure.
We obviously the structural steel guys there, so we climbed on board with Cameron and them, and we done all the structural steel work. Interesting job, absolutely beautiful location. You couldn't find a better spot to do a job from, but very enjoyable. Yeah, it was a good challenge.
Great. So I think let's maybe start with the architecturally related questions, and we'll go into the structural and fabrication and contracting questions. What was the architectural brief for the structure?
Yes, so the client wanted basically for the new structure, the new restaurant, the new design, to bring the restaurant into the 21st century, because it was a very old timber structure beforehand. So that was the brief, and then also just to consider shortening the construction time as low as possible. So, and with the damage to the site, it left us with a very small footprint that we could use. Previously, the restaurant went further than where this restaurant is now. In other words, it's sort of cantilevered over the bank, closer to the water. But we couldn't do that because the bank was damaged during the fires. The vegetation burnt away, and the banks became unstable. So we started, and also to protect the restaurant in the future, because there's a lot of wave action from the lagoon on that side. So we actually piled the whole front of the structure with very close piles, so that it would secure the ground underneath the restaurant, so that we wouldn't have any future problems relating to any storm damage to the banks. So that's how the project sort of came out of the ground. And then with the person who had started the construction, we realized that they didn't have the capacity to build the restaurant in the time frame required. And that's why I approached Cape Island. As Cameron said, we've worked together in the past. And so that's why the restaurant ended up being a long, narrow building, because the site was, that's all the site gave us to work with. We had to work closely with Sandparks too, because with the new laws regarding building close to water, we were falling very close to not even being allowed to build. So we managed to negotiate with them. So they also had quite a few requirements that we had to fulfill with the design of the building. So all of that helped to shape and mold the design that I prepared to what you see now. Yeah, so now it's a restaurant that has more capacity than previously and offers more facilities for conferencing. They've hosted bands. They've been very successful in providing the tourists with recreational facilities. They continue with their walks around, and then the day visitors, they come and eat in the restaurant. So yeah, you can see there, I mean, the steel went up very quickly, and then Cameron and his team were able to continue working in between the steel by building the walls and infill panels. So that's how it helped to fast track the building process, because one trade didn't have to wait for another trade to finish before they could continue. So the steel made that possible. And it also, steel gives the opportunity for much larger openings than a concrete beam or things like that would allow. So that was also another benefit of using steel.
Great. Any questions, Tulani and Emmanuel?
Yeah, just a question. Maybe it's for Cameron or Jan. What kind of floor slab was used over the steel?
Not in situ, yeah, so it did formwork and reinforcing and cast. So initially we were looking at doing a precast system, but the site just wouldn't allow it. The crane access wouldn't have worked, so we went with the standard in situ slab.
Okay, yeah, and that was going to be my second question for Jan. I see a mobile crane in the picture in the background. Did that mean that you could actually get a mobile crane in there for the erection?
Man, it was not it was a crane truck basically that we got in, and that's what we had to get in. I think the design of this building is very simplistic, and I must give credit to Tracy and the engineer on the design of it. It made our life very easy, very simple. It's not a complicated building. It's very impressive looking, and I really think it's an awesome looking building. It was a simply put together building, so it made our life very easy. The connections, everything was simple. The tricky part, as you can see from the site, was getting in and the erecting. There was just at that time there was just a narrow pathway going down to the building site. As time progressed, Cameron and Cape Island, they actually built a concreted road going up. But at the time when we were erecting, it was still almost like a little two-track road. We could just manage to reverse in there with our crane truck. We had to start at the south end and work our way towards the north end in erecting, just to make it all possible, because once you had gone to a certain point, you couldn't go back again. So that was the tricky part, was the installation of the steel work. Although everything, as Tracy said, ran so smoothly, it was very gratifying work to see that everything just ran well. It was a well-run project.
Tracy, what are you most proud of on this project?
I've been giving that a bit of thought since you sent it to me on the email, but I think the teamwork, I'm most proud of the teamwork that everyone worked together for the good of the project. We worked, so the teamwork is what made that building happen the way it did. And also it's one of my proudest designs. So the building itself would be my proudest.
Any comments, Tulani? I see that you're unmuted.
Tracy, I have one question for you. So have you guys, did you guys do an environmental assessment study on this? or was this now based on the existing studies? Because I believe there was an existing building.
Yes, we did have to. We didn't have to do environmental management plans or EIAs or anything like that. What happened was we had an environmentalist on board, Janet Everson from EcoRoute, and she was the liaison between ourselves and Sandparks, Cape Nature, and she put things in place with Sandparks that would allow us to build what eventually went out there. So we didn't have to necessarily do full-on studies because we used the building used the same footprint that was there previously. So we didn't, and then we were allowed to go, I think 50 squares more than that. But that was basically what we were restricted to. So the total size of the building was restricted to what was previously there from a size point of view, a footprint.
No, good. Yeah, the reason why I was asking, because I could imagine that they wouldn't have allowed you to actually go over and above what was there before. And I think that's why you didn't need to actually go a full EIA because there was already an existing structure. But it's quite actually interesting. Were there any stringent guidelines in terms of guiding you to use particular materials, you know, to actually suit the landscape and the environment that is around that area? And hence you've chosen to use steel.
Well, that was one of the reasons why steel came into play, why we used a lot of off-shutter concrete and exposed brickwork, because you know, painting and plastering, that's a very messy kind of trade. So we had to be very careful, it being a nature reserve, that we reduced the pollution in the site as much as possible. But Cape Island Homes also protected the site very well during construction to prevent any pollution going into the lagoon. I mean, the stormwater systems that had to be put in place just to deal with the rainwater were quite restrictive. They didn't want any rainwater gushing down the banks into the lagoon.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's good. It's a good design building, and I think it addresses the site very well. It's quite narrow and linear, which is actually quite interesting. It would have been something else. So basically, it flows with the ocean as well. So it's actually not on the opposite direction of the ocean like what the bridge is actually doing. But it's quite interesting.
Nice, great. I think let's shift on to our structural engineering / fabrication / contractor questions. For someone who has never seen the site and would like a description of what the structural framing entails, can you give us a bit more? I'm not sure if Jan or Cameron would be best to answer this one, but perhaps between the two of you, can you let us know what the structural framing consists of?
Jan can do the structural, I'll do the infill panel and the rest of the envelope.
Okay, I think from the structural side, what I, as I said earlier, the simplicity of the whole design was very creative from the engineer and from the architect side, and that made it very easy. It's basically columns and beams right through, columns from the piles that Cameron and them, they first done ring beams on top of the piles, and we just, with the holding down bolts, we came out of there with columns. All the columns were square tubing, so everything was a very standard sizes. So we went for one standard size of column right throughout. In some places it might have been a little bit over engineered, but just to keep uniformity, we went to the same columns right throughout. And then the beams as well, the beams supporting the floor and the beams supporting the roof work on both sides, also all uniform right through, which made everything very simple, but I think it gave it a beautiful feature from outside, from inside. It's a heavy steel feel. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because I do steel work, but I really think it's a beautiful looking building. And as I said right from the start, just the simplicity of it all made it very attractive.
What were some of the challenges that you had, you know,
Cameron?
maybe during the fabrication process or the erection process, and then maybe we can jump back to Cameron.
As I said, the fabrication, there wasn't any actual challenges. It was simple design. So the fabrication was very simple. Obviously, again, being on the coast, galvanizing properly was critical, and also the paint spec which was put on the painters for longevity. So the corrosion protection was carefully looked at, and then the only other challenge, which I say is a challenge, but everything worked together so well that it didn't seem like a challenge, was the erection. We were working around all the excavations and the things where, because as Tracy said, everybody is working together. So there was a lot of open holes and things like that where Cape Island were busy building, where we had to erect around. They obviously gave us access in there, and then we had to work from the south side and erect and come forward until we reached the north side and finished erection on that side. So it wasn't like a normal structure where we would start from the deck, work upwards. We actually worked sideways just for access sake. So I think the most challenging part on that was the erection. But again, because I think everything was planned so well, it didn't seem like a challenge. It just flowed.
Cameron, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Jan's mentioned there, the planning. We spent a hell of a lot of time planning. You know, because access was very limited. If we didn't spend the time planning, we definitely would have built ourselves into a corner or built further away, and then we wouldn't have been able to get back. And Jan also says this: the simplicity. You know, the devil's in the detail, and we spend a hell of a lot of time. I didn't have the luxury of plaster and paint and all the things to get skew walls straight. You know, everything, all the finishing materials were the structural components. So the off-shutter concrete, the brickwork, everything is still visible. There was nowhere to hide on that building. So we realized that if we didn't concentrate and plan properly, that would have potentially been, we wouldn't be all friends. So yeah, I think, yeah. When Tracy said we all worked as a team, absolutely. And it's we spent lots of time going through details, going through methodologies, how it was going to happen, and yeah, it worked well. And I think it shows that it's a very pretty building. Everyone who sees it comments how it blends into the environment. It's a massive structure, but it's so unassuming. And when you get there, it's a really, really pretty building. And it's basically a big factory. And to make a big factory pretty, yeah, I think the design team did very well.
Great. Any questions or comments to Lonnie and Emmanuel?
Just a question for Cameron. How does off-shutter concrete rebar work in a corrosive environment? Or do you just do a lot of cover? Yeah, so cover is obviously critical. Suret, the structural engineer, was, you know, obviously had to sign off all the pours. So we'll do all the steel fixing, get it all ready. Because it's off shutter, we can't use normal plastic spacer blocks. We've got to use concrete spacer blocks. And obviously because it's off shutter, any imperfection on your deck, a piece of wire, tags, just general builder dust, whatever. So we spend a hell of a lot of time cleaning and planning the decks before the concrete was passed, and we spent a hell of a lot of time ensuring that we got cover in that environment. So cover normally in that sort of environment would be 30 mils. We actually upped it to 50 mil. The concrete was also 30 MPa, so that's also going to add a hell of a lot of structural integrity from a porosity point of view. Yeah, it's so we concentrated a hell of a lot to make sure that we've got cover on steel.
Good. How would you say that this project demonstrates the benefit of steel as a material? Perhaps a question for all of you, but Cameron, maybe you want to lead, and then your team members can chime in as well.
Yeah, we love working with steel. You get your structure up, you get your structure and your roof up in weeks, where normally that would take you months. And having your roof on so early allows you to open up a whole bunch of different trades, where normally a normal building is very sequential, and you have to go through every step before you can get your roof on. Where structural steel building, that roof is on quickly, and then all of a sudden you can be doing groundworks, walling, electrics, plumbing. There's a whole bunch of trades that can actively work together in that environment that you've created. So weather doesn't play as big a part as it normally would. So we enjoy it, and we've also learned it's an incredibly easy way of building if you do a couple of very simple basics right. So the first steel building you ever put up, you don't realize how important the holding down bolts are until with steel you can't bend or put a planer on it. It's not a piece of wood. So if you do a couple of basics right, it's a very simple system. But conversely, if you don't concentrate in the beginning and get your levels, get your holding down bolts right, it can be a very challenging, very stressful environment to be in when your superstructure doesn't fit onto your form. Jan can probably attest to that.
Yeah.
So Jan, Tracy, from your side, any benefits of steel that you feel Cameron hasn't mentioned yet, or something you'd like to highlight? How this project benefits steel?
It keeps me in business. It keeps me in business. So yes, that's why I like steel work. But as Cameron says, it just makes everything a lot quicker. If that whole building had to be done by concrete, and they had to wait for the shuttering and then the pouring and then the drying time and everything, we're with the steel work, and obviously as Cameron said, it's just critical that the builders get their stuff right. So and everything. It doesn't always work right on all the projects, but on this project, everything just fitted like a glove, and it was very well done. But again, like Cameron said, it was I think a lot of planning from everybody's side that made it work.
Emmanuel, did you want to comment?
Yeah, well, I had a question. Unfortunately, it's for Tracy, whose microphone is not working now, but I'm sure Jan can answer it. Who decided on using a tube column on a tube for the column? Was that an architectural requirement, or did someone else just decide? And so the question is relating to architecture and tubes. So it is Tracy. Okay.
Oh,
excellent. Yes, because they do look very nice. Well done. Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. You have to ask Tracy that. We just did what we were told to do.
Right.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Any final comments? Tracy, you're welcome to type it in, or we can engage with you that way. Anything that you'd like to highlight about the project before we wrap up? This is kind of our last time for questions and comments that you want the judges.
Just one last question for Jan, Eunice. Jan, because this is an architectural column, did you have to do anything with the finishes? Because they're so close to essentially the occupant's eye level and distance.
Ben, no, fortunately, look, I think that was one of the things. That's why they went for square tubing columns, and even the bolted connections and everything like that. We actually welded plates onto the square tubing columns and tapped them so we could halfway through where we bolted on, we didn't have any ugly connections. It was very obviously a very visual thing because everything is visible. So we carefully looked at all the connections and everything. But the finishing of the columns, if the galvanizing is good quality and there's not much cleaning that needs to be done like that, and once your paint's on, then it gives a beautiful finish to everything. And I think we have a very good quality finish on everything there.
Just a quick one, Denise, on my side. I think maybe Cameron, you can take this one. Did you guys eventually, what did you guys use to actually finish the rest of the steel as a final coat and as a protective coat? To try and prevent something that actually has happened in the past. Something like intumescent paint or whatever that you guys have.
So we worked with the guys from Dulux. They came and spec quite a high quality, and the big thing with galvanizing is the preparation before the paint. So there's a galvanized cleaner, which you literally have to clean every single piece of galvanized paint with this galvanized cleaner, which takes there's almost like a greasy, waxy layer on new galvanizing. And if you paint or prime directly onto that, it'll peel within a year. So it was quite a painstaking operation cleaning it, and then obviously priming it with a galvanized primer. I can't remember the exact middle two coats, but the final coat was actually a roofing paint, which we did a whole bunch of experiments on color, and the roofing paint to us has given it a massive amount of longevity. But I think the secret there is the preparation. So far, touch wood, we haven't had any failure on the steel. It all looks as if we painted it. But I think that was down to the prep, the cleaning, and the galvanized primer before we started our three top coats.
Right. Any more questions or comments? I see we've got some comments from Tracy saying that she uses steel in most of her designs, that it allows her to make more elegant openings. The slimness of steel is also aesthetically pleasing. Thank you. That from the proxy voice of Tracy. So yeah, that's great. We like to hear that. Cameron, Jan, Tracy, have you got any final comments? Or Aman and Tulani, have you got any more questions or comments?
Nothing from our side, thanks.
Great.
I'm also done.
We're good, thanks.
Nice job. Well done.
Awesome.
Thank you
So much for your time. And the Steel Awards app is live. You will probably have gotten an email recently about your profile within the app that you need to just go and update it. I'm going to be sending an email out just with the link to the app. I need to just pre-registered all the project team members, so you should be able to get in. But watch your inbox for some info on that, because we are going to be live streaming the awards this year. Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a fab rest of the day.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Thanks, Denise.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
Cheers.